My dad used my illness to get $50,000, used them to go on trips with my golden child brother, and left me in the hospital. Now I'm in a movie, and he has to pay me $200,000. So yeah, I, 18 male, have been meaning to write this for a while. Not sure why exactly. Maybe just to get it off my chest. Maybe because I feel like most of my life I've been erased or ignored, and writing it here feels like proof I existed. I'm not asking for sympathy or anything like that. Honestly, I don't even know if people will read all this, because it's going to be long. But whatever, it's my story. I've been sick since the day I was born. Not like flu sick or broken arm sick. I mean full-on terminal, like doctors literally said, he won't make it to 5. Then when I did, he won't make it to 10, and so on. Now I'm 18, which I guess is something, but I've spent most of that time in hospitals. If you've ever seen those white walls and heard machines beeping for hours, you know what I'm talking about. That was basically my childhood playground. I was born in November. At least that's what my aunt told me. I obviously don't remember it, but people have repeated the story enough that it feels like I was there. The doctors knew my mom shouldn't go through with the pregnancy. She had heart problems, and there was a good chance the strain of giving birth would kill her. Plus, they told her straight up, I'd be born with a condition that wasn't going to let me live long. But she didn't care. She told them, even if I only get to hold him once, that's worth it. She never held me. She died right after I came out. My dad was there, and from what I've been told, he went from crying over her to glaring at me like I was a monster. Imagine being born, and your first label is murderer. I didn't know it, obviously, but that was stamped on me from day one, and I wasn't even the only kid. My older brother, Ryan, a year older than me. Healthy, strong, everything I wasn't. Even before I was old enough to understand, I could feel the difference. Like the love that was supposed to be mine had been rerouted to him instead. From the start, Ryan got to be the golden boy while I was the ghost hanging around in the background. My dad never forgave me. He would actually tell people, my wife gave her life for that thing. Like I wasn't even a person. He called me the illness that entered this house. Not my son, not my kid. Just some disease. He couldn't even look at me without getting mad. When I was little, maybe 5 or 6, I overheard him once telling someone on the phone, I should have let him die at birth. Would have saved me the trouble. I didn't even understand the full weight of what that meant back then, but I knew it was bad. I remember sitting in my hospital bed crying into the blanket because I felt like maybe I really wasn't supposed to exist. The thing is, I was always sick. My lungs, my immune system, everything was weak. I caught infections like other kids catch colds, but mine could land me in ICU. I lived in this constant cycle. Get a little better, go home for a few weeks, end up right back in the hospital. Nurses knew me by name. One nurse walked past my room and called out, "Morning, furniture," with a sad smile. I laughed, but inside I knew she meant I'd been there too long. They were nice, but you could see it in their eyes. They never expected me to grow up. My dad didn't bother much with visits. When he did show up, he'd stand by the door like he couldn't stand being too close. Sometimes he'd lean in and say stuff like, "Your mom's dead because of you. Don't forget that." Or, "You're just wasting everyone's money." Once, when I was maybe 7, I remember he picked up a tray of food they brought me and dumped it in the trash, saying, "Why bother feeding a corpse?" The nurse walked in right after, and I'll never forget the look on her face. Like she wanted to say something but didn't know if she was allowed. My father figured out early that my illness could make him look like a tragic single dad to outsiders. He signed up for charity dinners, church fundraisers, even online campaigns for my treatment. I'd hear him on the phone. "Yes, every dollar helps. My poor boy has only months left." He'd lower his voice just enough to sound broken, but when the calls ended, he'd grin. None of that money made it to me. Instead, I'd see pictures pop up later, him and my brother at a theme park or in front of some fancy restaurant. Captioned, "Making memories with my beloved son." Guess which son he meant? Not me, never me. I knew all of this. I'd scroll through those pictures from my hospital bed, tubes in my nose, lungs on fire, watching my father use my illness to fund Ryan's vacations. But I was too weak to do anything about it. By the time I was a teenager, I'd done the math. Between the charity dinners, the church fundraisers, and the online campaigns, my dad must have raised over $50,000 for my treatment. $50,000 that could have gone toward better equipment, extra care, maybe even easing some of the pain. Instead, it bought roller coasters, hotel rooms, and steak dinners for Ryan. That number haunted me. It wasn't just money. It was proof of how much my suffering was worth to him. A vacation package. But it wasn't all completely dark, because my aunt, Lila, is basically the reason I'm still here at all. She couldn't have kids of her own. and after my mom died, she stepped in without hesitation. She was the one sitting with me through long nights when my chest felt like it was on fire, the one bringing me comic books and sketch pads so I had something to do other than stare at blank hospital walls. She never treated me like a mistake, never looked at me with that disgust my dad carried. If anything, she made me believe maybe my mom's choice wasn't wasted, that maybe I was worth something after all. But Lila didn't know everything. She thought my father was just distant or not good with hospitals. She knew he rarely visited, that he barely looked at me, but she didn't hear the things he whispered when no one else was around. She didn't know about the donations he pocketed, or the way he used the money people thought was keeping me alive to take Ryan on trips. She only ever saw the tip of the iceberg, never the massive cruelty buried underneath. One time, when I was about 10, he even put on a show just for her. My aunt was sitting by my bed, reading me one of those old comic books she always brought when he walked in carrying a bag of fast food. He never brought me food, but that day, he set the bag down with this fake smile plastered on his face. "Brought you something, champ," he said, giving my shoulder a quick pat. It wasn't warm. It was the kind of touch that felt staged, like an actor in a bad play. Aunt Lila smiled, almost relieved, like maybe he was finally trying. She even said, "That's good of you." The second she left the room to take a phone call, he leaned down, voice low and sharp. "Don't get used to it. She thinks I'm being nice. You and I both know the truth." Then he picked up the food he just set down, crumpled the bag, and dumped it in the trash. When my aunt walked back in, he was all smiles again, saying, he wasn't hungry. She nodded, and I stayed quiet, because what else could I do? Still, even with her, the shadow of my dad was always there. He controlled the money, the decisions, the family image. At gatherings, people would ask, "And how's your other boy?" And he'd act like I didn't exist. He'd say, "Ryan's doing great." That's my brother. And then change the subject. I'd be sitting right there, quiet, invisible. One time I was hooked up to a breathing machine, and he leaned down and whispered, "Every dollar they spend keeping you alive is money stolen from Ryan's future." He didn't care that the nurse was literally right there. She froze like she couldn't believe what she was hearing, but she didn't say a word. They never did. Birthdays were the worst. Normal kids get cake, right? Maybe a party, presents. One year I was turning 9, and he showed up with flowers. Not the nice kind. Black roses. He set them on my tray table and said quietly, almost like a joke, "These are for your grave. Red for your mother's. Black for yours." I just stared at him, trying to process what he meant. When my aunt walked in a little later, she didn't know what he'd said. He was already gone. But she saw my face. She saw how I wouldn't touch the tray, how my eyes were fixed on the floor. She asked me what was wrong, but I just shook my head. That was the pattern. She never heard the words herself, but she always noticed how my mood dropped after his visits. She'd sit with me longer on those nights, bringing books or cracking little jokes, trying to lift me back up without really knowing what had been said. Ryan got everything handed to him. New bike when he turned 10, brand new phone at 12, a gaming console for all his hard work at school. Me? I'd get to watch him open presents from a hospital bed if I was lucky. There was one time when Ryan got this huge basketball hoop for the backyard. Dad actually dragged me out of the hospital for a weekend, during a brief remission, and after the doctors cleared a 24-hour pass, just so I could sit in a lawn chair and watch a real boy play. He sat there clapping and shouting Ryan's name every time the ball went through the hoop. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there shivering under a blanket, 'cause the cold air made my chest ache. Dad turned to me and said, "See that? That's what health looks like. That's what life looks like." Like I needed reminding. It wasn't just the gifts either. It was the way Dad spoke to him. Ryan would come home with some little certificate from school, and Dad would kneel down, pat him on the shoulder, and go, "I'm proud of you, son." I never once heard those words directed at me. Not once in 18 years. And it wasn't like I didn't try. I'd write stories in my notebooks, spend hours sketching, learn things from books while I was stuck in bed. But none of that mattered to him. To him, Ryan breathing was worth more than me creating anything. One night when I was about 13, Dad brought Ryan to the hospital after one of his basketball games. Ryan was still in uniform, sweaty, holding this little plastic trophy they gave out to every player on the team. Dad sat it on my tray table and said, "Look at that. That's what your brother earned." "What have you earned? Another night hooked to a machine?" Then he picked the trophy back up and gave it to Ryan, patting him on the back like he'd just won the NBA Finals. Ryan didn't say anything. He just looked at me kind of awkward, like he knew it was messed up but didn't want to piss Dad off. At birthdays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Ryan was the star of the show. People would ask how we were both doing, and Dad would answer for Ryan, going on and on about his grades, his sports, his friends. Then when it came to me, he'd just shrug and say, "Still sick." That was it. Like I wasn't a person with a whole life of my own, just still sick. And the way he said it, you could hear the annoyance. Like he was tired of even having to mention me. The part that stings the most was how he made me feel like my existence was something Ryan had to suffer through too. He'd say things like, "Your brother has to live with knowing his sibling is a failure." Imagine how hard that must be for him. As if Ryan was the victim in all of this. Not me, the one fighting every day to breathe. Ryan was the one Dad pitied, like having me as a brother was some kind of burden on him. And yeah, Ryan soaked it up. He liked being the favorite. Who wouldn't? He didn't outright mock me or anything, but he didn't stick up for me either. When Dad would say stuff like, "Be glad you're not like him," Ryan would just nod or stay quiet. Maybe he was scared to disagree, or maybe he liked the attention too much. Either way, I learned pretty quick I was on my own. It was a Sunday dinner at my grandparents' place. Big table, food everywhere, whole family sitting around. Dad decides to stand up and toast Ryan for getting a B+ on a math test. Not even an a B+. He goes on for like 5 minutes about how Ryan is proof of his parenting, how he's destined for greatness, all that crap. Everyone claps, Ryan looks embarrassed but also kind of proud. Then someone, my uncle I think, says, "And what about him?" pointing to me. Dad doesn't even look at me. He just waves his hand and says, "He's hanging on." That's all he ever does. Just hanging on. The room went dead silent. I wanted to sink into the floor. I couldn't even eat after that. I just pushed food around on my plate until my aunt quietly drove me back to the hospital. So when I was 14, the Make-A-Wish people came into my room. They told me straight up, "You qualify. You get one wish." I didn't even have to think about it. I wanted to meet this animator I'd looked up to since I was a little kid. His movies carried me through nights when I thought I wouldn't wake up. They were my escape. That was my dream. Tour the studio, meet the guy, see how it all worked. For once, something in my life was actually mine. My aunt was hyped. She said it was perfect, that it fit me so well, and she couldn't wait to see me happy for a change. But then, as always, my dad had to ruin it. He stormed into my room one evening, slamming the door open like he owned the place. No, "Hi," no, "How are you?" Nothing. Just, "Give the wish to Ryan." I stared at him like he'd grown another head. "What?" He crossed his arms, looking down at me like I was dirt. "Give it to your brother. He deserves it more. He's got real issues too. Social anxiety. He needs something like this to help him. You're going to die anyway, so why waste it on you?" That was it. That was the breaking point. I'd been swallowing his crap for years. Every insult, every comparison, every damn flower on the grave speech. But this was him trying to take away the one good thing in my life, the one thing that was supposed to be mine. I snapped. I sat up in bed so fast I yanked the IV line, and I didn't even care. My voice came out louder than I'd ever heard it. "Shut the hell up!" I shouted. The nurse in the hallway stopped and stared, but I didn't care. I was done. "You think you can keep doing this to me? Blaming me for Mom? Calling me a disease? Pretending I don't exist? Fine. You hate me. I don't give a damn anymore. But you don't get to take this from me. You don't get to steal this too." His face twisted like he'd been slapped. He wasn't used to me raising my voice. For the first time, I saw him hesitate. But then he doubled down. "You're selfish. You're just proving it. You could make Ryan happy, but you won't, because you're the same selfish brat that killed your mother." And that's when I lost it completely. My chest was burning. My hands shaking. But I screamed back so loud the walls shook. "Stop saying that! Stop putting her death on me! She made her choice. She chose to have me, and you know it. You've spent my whole life trying to make me pay for something I didn't even do. I'm not your punching bag anymore. I don't care about what you think. You will not keep taking from me. You already took enough of me. You're not taking this too." He actually stepped back, like he didn't know what to do. His whole thing had always been control. Me sitting quiet while he spit poison at me. But this time, I wasn't sitting quiet. I was standing my ground, hooked up to tubes and wires, but still staring him down like I was ready to fight. He tried one last jab. "You wouldn't even be alive if it weren't for me paying your bills." I laughed in his face. "Then stop paying them. Go ahead. Walk out. You've never been a father to me anyway. You think throwing money around makes you some kind of man? All it makes you is a coward who can't handle the fact his wife loved me enough to risk her life. You hate me because deep down, you know she chose me. Not you. Me." That shut him up. His jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack, but no words came out. He just glared at me, shaking with rage, but he had nothing left to say. For the first time ever, I felt like I'd actually beaten him. That's when the door swung open. My aunt walked in, carrying a bag of snacks like she'd done 100 times before, but froze when she saw the scene. Me red-faced and shaking, him looming over me with that venomous glare. Her eyes went wide, and for a second I thought she might faint. Then her whole face hardened. "What the hell are you doing to him?" she snapped. Her voice wasn't gentle this time. It was sharp, furious, something I'd never heard from her before. She stormed across the room, planting herself between us. "Get out! Now!" He tried to bluster, throwing his hands up. "Oh, so now I can't even talk to my own son without you interfering?" "Talk?" she barked. "That's not talking. I heard enough. Get out!" He sneered, muttered something under his breath, and then stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The room went quiet except for the steady beeping of the machines. My aunt turned to me, her face softening immediately, though the anger still burned in her eyes. She sat down beside me, taking my hand. "Sweetheart, what was that? What's going on? Tell me." And for the first time, I did. Everything came spilling out. The whispers, the black roses, the way he told me I killed my mom, how he used me for sympathy and donations only to spend the money on Ryan's trips. Every disgusting little thing I'd held in for years. By the time I finished, her hands were trembling. Her face was pale, then flushed, then pale again, like she couldn't decide between breaking down crying or tearing the walls down with her bare hands. Finally, she pressed my hand tighter and said, voice low but burning with rage, "He will never get away with this. I'm going to take care of it. I swear to you." 2 days after that fight, my aunt made the call. I didn't even know at first. She kept it quiet, like she didn't want to get my hopes up in case nothing came of it. But she'd seen enough. That day in the hospital, when she walked in and caught my dad towering over me, spitting poison in my face, it broke something in her. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It wasn't just her noticing how my mood sank every time he left. She had finally seen it for herself, raw and undeniable. So when the women from child services showed up in my room, 2 of them dressed in neat business clothes with clipboards in hand, I wasn't surprised. Nervous, yes, but not surprised. They pulled up chairs beside my hospital bed. "We're here because some concerns were raised about your father," one of them said, her tone calm but serious. "We just want to hear from you. You're not in trouble. You're safe here." Normally, that kind of moment would have shut me down. I'd have thought, if I tell the truth, he'll find a way to make me pay for it. That was always the fear, that my words would just come back around like a boomerang. But this time was different. My aunt was standing by the window, arms crossed, her jaw set like stone. She'd seen what he did. She believed me. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't the only witness. So I talked, slowly at first, halting, but then it all spilled out. I told them about the black roses, about the grave comments, about the way he shoved Ryan's trophies in my face and called me a corpse pretending to be alive. I told them about the money he raised for my treatment and how it disappeared into trips and dinners with Ryan instead. And finally, I told them about that fight, the words he threw at me, how he blamed me for Mom's death, how he tried to steal even my Make-A-Wish moment. The women wrote furiously, their pens scratching the paper so fast it almost drowned out the machines beside me. One of them paused and said, "Has anyone else ever heard him say these things to you? Any witnesses?" "The nurses," I said. "Ask them. They've heard plenty." And it was true. Nurses had frozen in doorways when he hissed poison into my ear. They'd stood there, eyes wide, clearly shocked, but never stepped in because they weren't sure if it was their place. I always thought that silence meant no one would back me up. But now? Now it was evidence. The child services workers actually did it. They left my room and spoke to the staff. I could see them at the nurses' station, talking to people who had known me since I was a kid. And I watched as those nurses, some of the same ones who had only ever looked at me with pity, finally nodded, finally spoke up. They confirmed it. They told the workers about the way my dad leaned over me, the words he used, the way he'd sneer while I was hooked up to tubes. When the workers came back into my room, their faces were different, harder, set in that way people look when they've seen too much to ignore. One of them put her clipboard down and looked me straight in the eye. "You don't deserve any of that," she said quietly. "None of it. And it's going to stop." And I can't even describe what that felt like, hearing an adult finally say the words I'd been waiting for my whole life. When the court finished the investigation, they broke it all down in writing. Out of the nearly $200,000 my dad owed, a portion went back to the charities and donors he scammed. But the majority, over $120,000, was ordered as direct restitution to me for years of medical neglect and emotional abuse. The rest was fines and penalties that went to the state. So yes, after everything he stole and wasted, the judgment meant that he has to pay me personally, not just the system. For once, the money he'd raised off my suffering was finally coming back to me. My dad got a call from them the next day, and of course he lost it. The minute he found out about the judgment, the restitution, the fines, the fact that he owed nearly $200,000, he went ballistic. I heard later he was screaming over the phone, "That money was mine. You can't just take it from me," like he'd forgotten it was stolen in the first place. By the time he stormed into the hospital, his face was the color of raw meat. He was shouting about how my aunt was poisoning me, how I was lying to get attention, how the state couldn't tell him how to raise his kid. But here's the difference. This time, he wasn't just yelling at me. He was yelling in front of officials. The more they tried to calm him down, the louder he got, spitting about how he wasn't going to pay a dime for that useless brat. Security got called. He was escorted out. And I sat there, watching him be dragged away, and for the first time, I felt like maybe the system was on my side. My aunt didn't stop there. She started paperwork to adopt me formally. She told me she'd been thinking about it for years, but didn't think the courts would go for it unless I was really in danger. After the Wish incident, she had proof. She had witnesses. She had child services backing her up. "He's not going to hurt you anymore," she told me one night, sitting at the edge of my bed. "I'll make sure of it." And I believed her. Things didn't change overnight, though. My dad kept trying. He'd call the hospital at all hours, demanding updates, putting on this fake voice like he was the most worried parent in the world. "I just want to know how my boy's doing," he'd say, syrupy and desperate. At first, some of the newer nurses almost fell for it, but my aunt shut that down quick. She gave the staff strict instructions: no information to him without her approval. "If he wants to know something, he can ask me," she told them, her voice cold enough to freeze stone. That only made him angrier. A week later, on one evening around shift change, I heard the noise before I saw him. A deep pounding, thud, 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 echoing through the hall. When I peeked out my window, there he was at the nurse's station, his fist slamming against the glass partition. His face was red, almost purple, veins bulging at his neck. "Let me in," he shouted. "That's my son in there. You can't keep me away from him." A nurse tried to keep her voice calm. "Sir, you need to lower your voice. This is a hospital." "Don't tell me what to do," he snapped, jabbing a finger at her. "You people think you can keep me from my own blood? He's mine. Mine. I demand to see him." Another nurse stepped in. "We're following instructions from his legal guardian. If you want information, you'll have to go through her." He laughed, this harsh, ugly sound. "Guardian? Don't make me laugh. That woman isn't his mother. She's nothing. I'm his father. I was there when he was born. I pay the bills that keep him breathing. You really think you can lock me out?" By then, people were staring. Patients' families, orderlies, even doctors. My dad kept hammering the glass, his voice rising. "Ryan doesn't need a brother like him. You're wasting everyone's time keeping that one alive." I felt a sting in my chest at those words, but it wasn't the usual fear. It was anger. For once, I wasn't cowering under his voice. I was watching him unravel in front of everyone. Two security guards appeared, their radios crackling. "Sir, you need to calm down," one said firmly. "Calm down?" he barked. "This is my kid. You think you can keep me from him? You think you can erase me?" He turned toward my window then, his eyes wild, and for a moment our gazes locked. "You hear me in there? You're mine. You'll always be mine. You can't hide from me." That was the last straw. One of the guards grabbed his arm. "That's enough. You're leaving." He jerked against them, shouting, "Get your hands off me. I'll sue this place. You're all going to regret this." But they didn't let go. They hauled him toward the sliding doors as he kicked and cursed, his voice echoing down the corridor. I couldn't help it. I walked to the window and watched as they shoved him out into the parking lot. He stumbled, turned back to scream something I couldn't hear, and then finally disappeared into the night. As for Ryan, he was quiet through all of it. I don't know what Dad told him at home, but he didn't reach out. No texts, no visits, nothing. Part of me wanted him to show up to say, "Hey, I know Dad's crazy. I don't agree with him." But he didn't. And after a while, I stopped expecting it. I figured he was either brainwashed by Dad or too scared to go against him. Either way, I had to stop waiting for him to be a brother. The best part of all this? The wish actually happened. Once Dad was out of the picture, my aunt made sure nothing could screw it up. The Make-A-Wish people flew me out to California. I walked into the studio like I was stepping into another world. The animator I idolized shook my hand. and said he was glad to meet me. Glad to meet me. Not Ryan. Not the healthy son. Me, we toured the offices. I got to watch artists sketch characters, even threw out an idea that they actually scribbled down as a joke. For 2 days, I wasn't the sick kid, or the burden, or the mistake. I was just a kid living his dream. When we flew back, I felt lighter. Not physically, because my body was still breaking down, but mentally. I'd stood up to my dad. I'd seen him lose control. I'd been believed by strangers with authority, and I'd gotten my wish. For once, things lined up in my favor. By the time I turned 15, things had changed. Not my body. I was still dealing with machines and surgeries, but the way I saw myself was different. I wasn't the quiet kid lying there soaking up my dad's poison anymore. I'd fought back. I'd screamed in his face, and I'd watched him get dragged out of my hospital room by security. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt like I had control, even if it was just control over my own voice, and that mattered more than anything. And then the wish trip paid off in a way I never could have imagined. It started with an email. The animator I'd met sent me a sketch of a character that looked like me. Same messy hair, same skinny frame. He wrote a short message with it. I wanted to thank you. Meeting you reminded me why I started doing this in the first place. I stared at that email for hours. My dad had spent years telling me I was nothing, that I'd never leave a mark on this world. And here I was, staring at proof that I'd already made an impact on someone I admired. Months passed, and I went back to the grind. Hospital stays, new meds, more, he might not make it through this one. Talks from doctors. Same old routine. But then one night my aunt was scrolling through her phone and suddenly gasped. She turned the screen toward me, and there it was. That little character based on me, standing in the background of a teaser image for the animator's new film. My jaw dropped. At first I thought maybe it was just a placeholder, but no, it was me. My likeness, in an actual movie. When the film finally released, I nearly lost it. Not only was the character there, but in the credits, clear as day, was my name. My name in lights, in a movie theater. People around the world would see it. And it didn't just stop there. Fans online picked up on the character. They thought he was funny, relatable, kind of scrappy. They made memes, fan art, even cosplay. My inbox started filling up with messages from random strangers. Your character inspired me. He reminded me to keep going through my own stuff. Thank you for existing. Me, a kid stuck in a hospital bed, inspiring people I'd never met. Meanwhile, my dad tried to act like it wasn't a big deal. I heard through relatives that he'd roll his eyes whenever anyone mentioned the film. He told people it was a stupid and not real success, but everyone could see it for what it was. Jealousy. He'd spent my whole life trying to erase me, and now the world knew my face. He couldn't stop it. He couldn't bury it, and that burned him more than anything. The funniest part? At family gatherings, people stopped asking about Ryan first. They started saying, "Hey, isn't that your son in that movie?" My dad hated it. He'd change the subject, pretend he didn't hear. But my aunt? She'd say, "Yes, that's him. That's my boy." Hearing her say that out loud, proud of me after years of being ignored, it hit harder than any medicine. Here's the thing. My life is still short. Doctors don't sugarcoat it. I know I probably won't see 30, maybe not even 21, but I don't care anymore. Because my dad's whole mission was to make me feel like I'd vanish, like I'd die and be forgotten, like my mom wasted her life on me. And now, that's impossible. Even if I drop tomorrow, my name and my character are out there forever. Kids will grow up watching me. Fans will keep drawing me. My story's carved into something way bigger than my dad's hate. And honestly, I hope he sees it every day. I hope he flips on the TV and there I am, staring back at him from some cartoon his coworkers' kids are watching. I hope every time he tries to brag about Ryan, someone cuts him off to ask about me instead. Because no matter how hard he tried to bury me, I ended up bigger than him. So yeah, I'm 18 now, still fighting, but I'm not afraid anymore. Because even if my time runs out, I already won. My father's voice doesn't define me. My illness doesn't define me. That little animated character does. And every time someone laughs at him or sees him on screen, that's me saying, I was here. You couldn't erase me.